Call them. Do you have anybody joining us remotely?
Nobody so far.
Okay, let's do roll call, please. Call the meeting to order.
Chair Kelly,
Here.
Vice Chair Herman,
Here.
Board Member Faya. Yep. Board Member Rubble,
Here.
Board Member Zero.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First item of business is to approve the minutes from last meeting. Are there any exceptions or corrections that anybody wants to make on those?
Section 5, there might be a typo. Signage and stripping.
Striking.
I thought maybe that was striping.
That.
Would that be on page 4 or page 5?
That is on page 4. The fifth line down, about in the middle.
Thank you.
Any other corrections? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes with the exception?
Move to approve.
Second,
I'll second it.
in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Minutes approved as read. Any visitor communications to go over today, Jackson?
No visitor communication.
Great. Then let's jump into the board business. This is gonna be a lot easier group to talk about this, Paul, than with the builders in town, but let's jump into this.
Okay. So we wanted to bring you both our SDC update as well as our water and sewer rate update, but our water and sewer consultant is still finalizing that final report. We're going to meet with them later this week. And so today we'll just be talking SDCs. So to clarify, I am not an SDC consultant. I'm not an expert. I have dealt with them quite a bit, so I'll run you through what I know, and if I can't answer the question, I'll be very honest with you, and I'll go ask the question to our consultant. So with that, let's bounce into the agenda. So we're going to work a little bit on the background, go through the city's SDC policy, then we'll dive into the numbers, and then we'll see how we compare to our neighboring communities. So the history, our last SDC update was, our water and sewer SDC update was in 2018. And with that, we had in 2018 updated our water and wastewater master plans as well as our capital improvement plans. And so it's been very regular with the city that council has instructed us to update the SDCs after those master plans get updated.
Paul, do you remember what the increase was in 2018? What percentage wise? Was it 20, 50, 100?
It wasn't huge.
Okay.
No, it wasn't. We had a methodology change, which was, that was kind of the biggest part of that process. So the city had gone to a fixture-based methodology back in, I want to say 2010, maybe a little bit sooner, earlier than that. And so it was a complete pain. We had to count every fixture, plumbing fixture in every building permit, both residential and commercial and industrial. So think about how many fixtures are in a brewery or a commercial kitchen. And you basically have to be a plumbing inspector to know exactly what the heck is going on with the plumbing plans. And the idea was, you know, if you have a 5-bedroom, 5-bath house, you pay more than a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So the inequity is there's a lot of 5-bedroom, 5-bath house that use very little water. There's 2 people living in them. So we were getting pushback on that as well. So at that time, we changed to a meter-based methodology, which is pretty common. So everything's charged on the size of meter. And as you go up from a 3/4 to a 1 inch to a 1.5 inch to a 2 inch, the STCs go up proportionally to how much water can go through that meter. So we're still sticking with that methodology. It's worked pretty well. And again, it's equitable to people because if they need more water, they pay more. And you really allow the developer to kind of control their own destiny because they can go from a 2 inch to a 1.5 inch. They just might have more irrigation zones, or they are more efficient with their fixtures that they put in. So it's worked well. So we're going to move ahead with it. This study is based off of our recently adopted back in the spring of 2023 water and sewer master plans, and with those, the capital improvement plans that came out of the results of those master plans. And like I said, council has historically updated their SDCs when they've adopted the new master plans. So the policy discussion around SDCs, they only get charged to new development, and we charge them at the time of building permit issuance. There is a waiver ability in the code. Typically, well, not typically, historically, any kind of affordable housing project or anybody that comes in that wants an SDC waiver, council has approved that, and then council has backfed the water and sewer and parks and street funds to cover the SDCs. So they've kept the funds whole, which is fair to everybody that's paid into those funds, but also providing essentially a grant to the affordable housing applicants. So SDCs are comprised of two different fees. We have a reimbursement fee and an improvement fee. So the reimbursement fee captures the growth capacity that is in our existing infrastructure. So people that come after the project is put in still pay to the project, just like the people that came before it. And then the improvement fee is exactly what it is. It's for the capacity, growth capacity portion of the project. Now, it's important to remember that some of these projects can be 100% SDC eligible. Some can be a portion SDC eligible. Take, for example, our 16-inch transmission main replacement from the Waichus Junction up to the reservoir. So we got a 12-inch pipe that's in the ground that's been in there since the 60s. We're replacing it with a 16-inch pipe. So the cost to replace that 12-inch pipe is borne by the utility rates, so the operating fund. The difference between the 12-inch and the 16-inch pipe is the amount of future capacity that is reserved for growth that is SDC eligible. So typically pipe replacement projects, you'll have a split depending on the pipe size and the replacement pipe size. For a new well or a new reservoir, those are 100% SDC eligible because they're for future growth. So revenues for SDCs are restricted. They can only be spent on SDC eligible projects. They cannot pay for operating expenditures. A small portion can be used for administration of the SDC fund. We don't do that for our in-house staff. We do pay for our SDC consultant out of SDCs. So there's a small portion that'll go to Donovan Enterprises, who does our SDC updates. Okay, so again, STCs, they're an important part of our infrastructure financing strategy. We have been able to cash fund most of our growth-related projects to date in the water fund with STCs, since we've had pretty good STC revenue for the last 15 years or so, minus a few years in the mid-2000s. It's been really strong since about 2014 to this year. And this year, we've actually seen it kind of tail back a little bit as building slowed. And truthfully, we're running out of property to develop in town. As we move forward, you know, we have our $20+ million worth of water and sewer projects, and we have about $4 million worth of SECs in the bank. So we're going to have to debt finance about $16 million of those projects, and we can use STCs to help serve that debt. But it's interesting when you go out to solidify an agency to issue you debt, you have to cover it with a more solid revenue, so rates. So you got to boost up your rate structure and how much rate debt service capacity you have, and then you can use STCs to help offset that, or you just bank it and you cash fund, you know, a future project with it.
So we are going to do debt financing on this.
We absolutely are. Yep.
Think you can get any state revolving fund?
We're going to go to our one stop in April, which will have DEQ, Business Oregon, USDA, all the funding agencies there. We've already given them our list of projects and the background on those projects, and then how our contribution can be made using, you know, existing operating fund reserves as well as STC reserves. And then they come with a funding package. So I'm sure that'll be part of it. It's going to be heavily, if not 100% loans, because our AMI is so high out here. Yep. Lapine, they got a great deal on their projects, and their loans, and a lot of them were forgivable, were like 1.5%. And they got a ton of grants just because their AMI is so much lower. Okay. So let's dive into the numbers. Our current STCs are for water, $3,951. This is for a 3/4 inch meter equivalent. And wastewater is $5,166. Now, since 2018, when we last did our STC update, we have done inflationary adjustments to those numbers that came out of 2018, which has helped. In fact, I think 2 out of the last 3 years, they were over 5% inflationary adjustments. So that's helped. Unfortunately, the cost of infrastructure has gone to the roof, as well as labor, as well as materials. And so we're in a position now with, especially on the water end, of almost doubling our 3/4 inch water STC. It's going to go up to $7,229, and wastewater is very modest on the increase. It's going up about $300 to $54.72. And the big reason for that is we had more cash STC revenue stockpiled in the wastewater STC fund, as well as our wastewater system is largely pretty new. You know, it's 22 years old. We don't have a lot of pipe replacement projects because our pipe is all 3034 PVC gasketed pipe that's been tested. We don't have a lot of I&I, virtually none. And our manholes are still in good shape. So there's not a lot of rehab type projects in that.
That was a question I had. Thank you.
And our engineer at that time, he was amazing at getting the largest pipe put in the ground as he could that the funding agencies would allow. And USDA is very careful with you that you're not oversizing things on their dime. They come in and they take a snapshot of your population, and that's what they're funding the infrastructure for. And they were able to get a lot of pipe from 8-inch to 12-inch, 12-inch to 15-inch, 15 to 18. And it's paid off a lot. So we still have a lot of capacity. When we did the master plan update and they modeled the system and took a lot of flow data, they really only found one pipe in the system that was going to meet capacity in the 20-year planning period. So very fortunate there. Okay, so how we compare. So today we're pretty low on the water, 39.51. With the increase, we will be the highest in the region. And that's probably until Ben finishes their STCs. It's whoever updates their STCs typically moves up to the top of the pile, especially in those top three or four. But you can see that's a pretty good increase.
Again, when people are talking to us, the increases are because material increase, construction cost, inflation, and projects, right?
I would say the size of the projects. So under the last master plan, I believe our engineer at that time had a 1.6 million gallon reservoir coming in, only one additional well. And because those projects have gotten bigger, because the population has increased and our forecast went, I think we were planning for a population of like 5,500 people in that 20-year planning period, starting in 2017, 2018, and now we're looking at 7,000. So pretty big difference. Okay, next slide. On the wastewater end, we're basically right in the middle, just going up, like I said, about $300 there. Bend is still higher, Lapine is higher. And so we're still pretty competitive there. And if we go to the next slide, Jackson. So this is where we are with the total SDC bill. And we charge for water, sewer, streets, and parks. Madras has a stormwater SDC, which is kind of interesting. It's not much. But we're right about in the middle with the proposed increase. And we have parks SDCs getting updated pretty much right now. Water and wastewater is a little ahead of them. And that's going to go up about $3,000. So we're going to be right in there with Prineville, $19,000, $20,000. Still competitive, but again, we're going up.
Are these numbers just proportional to water meter size, whether it residential or commercial, or is commercial a whole nother thing evaluated based
So,
on something?
All these three slides, all these numbers are based off a 3/4 inch meter. So as you go to,
And that's
1 inch.
commercial or residential, because I see.
it doesn't matter.
Okay, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It says single family, but a 3/4 inch meter, because you'd have a 3/4 inch meter on a commercial building, they pay the exact same STC.
Okay.
So there's only that amount of water that can go through that meter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get up into a 2-inch, 3-inch meter, and water and sewer today, for a 3-inch meter, it's about $100,000 between the two. And then with this increase, it's going to be quite a bit more. So again, those bigger meters, they pay a lot more on the SDC line.
And I think this is probably on this slide because this is a comparison. You have to do like a single family home comparison for when you do all of them because streets and parks are a different methodology.
Yep.
Yeah. just wondering, it's like I've heard a story in Bend of somebody who was gonna open a business brewery in Bend, and then it was not feasible because of SDCs.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it
I'm
was
sure.
somebody that was starting out in Lapine, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go to Bend.
Right.
And so I guess my concern or question is there any worry about future impacts of commercial growth? Because we have these huge potential SDCs, or
Could be.
is that not?
Could be. You know, everything is increased on the commercial side for building,
Yeah.
including profit, we've learned. Just, there's just a different mentality, and it's kind of changed over the last 5 years. Developers have really taken advantage, and especially on the construction side, you know, they've dealt with obviously inflationary impacts for materials and labor, but also profits gone up as well. So with that in Bend, you can see the difference. You know, they're going to be 13 grand. The biggest thing with Bend is that park SDC. Their park SDC is like 10 grand, and ours is going to be 3 and some change. So yeah, we're still competitive. But again, it's gonna have to, these numbers have to get built into their pro forma, like anything else.
Does Sisters offer a financing option or anything?
We do not. Nope. Nope. Not
With
in
what,
that.
with what I'm working on, they offer a 10-year, but they have to be first in line on your property for getting paid back.
Oh, gotcha.
And
With the county.
with the county.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's not part of our methodology and policy, and has never been. I think where they've tried to help is in that affordable housing arena. That's where council has been able to be creative. And they've still kept those funds, you know, whole. So nothing's been sacrificed out of those funds for that.
So Paul, this is a big list of projects to implement. I was going over the list for water and sewer, so it's 15 to 20 substantial sized projects for a 20-year timeline.
Right.
Is that gonna be difficult to deliver?
It's over 20 years. So I would say the first 5 years is going to be probably the most difficult. But we're going to end up with a full-time project manager managing those
Oh.
projects.
So a city employee rather than just going through the contracts?
Correct. Yep. Yep. A little more hands-on, a little more control, and a little more cost efficient as well. So difficult, yes. Fun and exciting, definitely. Definitely.
All the, all you geeks are like, we got projects.
Now it's like, give us some money. And, you know, the bidding environment is starting to get more favorable, which is really nice. Good timing. This project out here came in about $1.5 million under what their construction budget was. So, yeah. Okay, Jackson. So the schedule, so we took it to council in January and wanted to bring it to you guys. And then if we need to, we can go back and do an additional council workshop in April. We got the public hearing scheduled for May, and council will adopt by resolution. And then the new SCC rates will go into effect July 1st. And this has been traditionally how council has done the approval and the implementation. We got a 90-day window in here. COBA requested a 90-day essentially public notice period. so we could get more feedback from the building community. It was no problem to us. It didn't throw off our July 1st timeframe, so we said no problem. So we're in that 90-day time period with not only water and wastewater, but Parks SDCs as well. And then COBA wanted to do a phase, that's kind of their compromised, a phased implementation approach. And our council, it looks like they're leaning just going July 1st, 100%. So, which is consistent with what they've done in the past.
What would they want to phase? Like certain types of development?
No,
Every-
council can choose to implement the full SDC rate or a portion.
ramp it up.
Right. They could choose to spread it out over a year, 2 or 3 years and then phase it in. But again, there's a risk there. You're gonna lose some revenue. So
And the rate goes in effect once the permit's approved, correct? When does the rate take effect?
when we issue their building permit,
Oh, when it's issued. Okay.
yep, on issuance,
But
not on.
how-
some
who are you
buildings.
capturing after July 1? Is it, if people are already in the door for land use, are they under the old rates? Or is it just if you're not in the door yet for a building permit?
No, it's when you pick up your building permit. So it doesn't matter when you submit. It's
Oh,
when
so
you
you-
pick up your building permit after July 1, because they play the game and they issue, or they'll submit 80 building permits and they'll wait, and you spend all this time and money on review. And then they'll wait, a year to pick them up.
Mhm.
So that's how you avoid that from happening. Okay. That's what I had. That's what I know. Hopefully it was helpful and understanding, and a very important part of our financing strategy is using STCs, not only for water and wastewater projects, but street and parks projects as well. So
What kind of, this is Sister Salsa, what kind of blowback do you expect on this?
we have not heard from anybody except COBA, which is we reach out to them directly. We don't wait for them to come to us. So we haven't heard anything from anybody.
On the, one of the groups I belong with is Alzheimer's. I just forgot what I was talking about. Move on. Who's Coba or Coba?
Central Oregon Builders Association, sorry. They're a funded organization that basically supports and represents the building community in Central Oregon.
Residential.
Most strongly residential.
Everything residential, commercial, yeah. So, they're very tight with Polish Homes and Hayden Homes, and they walk hand in hand with those people. And
Are you making a presentation to them?
have I?
Yeah.
Our SCC consultant during the workshop, COBA was on the call, listening.
If I buy a new Hayden home, do I ever see that number? I probably don't, right? It's just built into the price.
It's
of
built
the
into
home.
the price, yeah. Yep.
So with the methodology that we went through to get to our rate increase, is that gonna keep us out of court? From a builder saying it's excessive or?
It meets state statute. It, which requires the new master plans and the new updated capital project lists. And council has the ability under state statute to implement 100% of those STCs. So, yeah, I would say so. I mean, you never know. Anybody can,
Sue for anything?
yeah, but it's pretty tried and true. Again, under this meter-based methodology that pretty much everybody uses statewide, it's tested the court system, so.
I think the pushback becomes they try to convince council to just implement something less, which they can.
Yeah.
And you have
Yep.
less money to build things.
And truthfully, I mean, in this town at this time, there are people expecting us to make sure growth pays for growth.
Mhm.
More so, I would say, than making sure that building permits are moving out the door at a decent pace. It didn't always used to be like that. I mean, back in, coming out of the recession, it was very important to get that construction activity going in this town because it feeds so many people. And so council did not update rates for quite a few years until we were out of that recession cycle.
It almost seems like that should be the mantra for this whole thing is growth pays for growth.
Yep, absolutely.
If you're a business and you lease a space in town that it already exists, already built, which of these would you pay at some point in developing that space?
You wouldn't pay anything. So the only reason you would pay water or sewer SDCs would be if you needed a larger meter. So if you're gonna be using more water and you needed an inch and a half versus a 1 inch, then you would pay the difference between that inch meter and the inch and a half, and that portion of the SDC you'd pay for. But otherwise, if you're doing a TI, tenant improvement, or even a redevelopment of a lot that had a meter already with it, they had already paid an SDC, they get a credit for that. And the new developer, the new owner, the new building tenant gets that credit, and they don't have to pay SDCs unless they need a larger meter size.
So if
I
the,
know we're, oh, go ahead.
so just to follow up on John's question is, so the tenant, when they're negotiating their lease contract and they need a bigger meter, they need to make sure that their landlord's involved in that decision-making process so that they can do it as a tenant improvement or whatever they want to include the cost of it.
Absolutely. We typically don't get involved with that. That's between the tenant and the building owner, and we don't see a lot of tenant-driven meter upgrades. It's mostly property owner driven.
Rachel?
Another follow-up question. So I know we're talking about water and sewer, but what are transportation and parks SDCs based on?
So transportation are based on peak PM trips.
Okay.
So one trip is allocated for every single family dwelling.
Mhm.
And then when you do a commercial development, we'll require a traffic study from an engineer, and they'll tell us how many peak PM trips. They'll either do a study on an existing like use, or they can go to an actual engineering manual and pull out X number of square feet of retail space equals this many trips. So
Yeah, so you could, if you were going from like a low trip count use to a higher trip count use, you could pay transportation SDCs,
absolutely,
but not water sewer.
right. Or
On an existing
parks.
On an, yeah, so if you're renting a
Yep.
space, and converting it from like warehouse storage to
Fika.
Fika,
Bring it
doctor's
to the
office.
Right. Yeah.
Where there's a lot more traffic. that-
Yep. Yep.
That's where people can get surprised on transportation SDCs.
Right.
And that would go, I mean, but does that go to the tenant or does that go to or is that something they negotiate?
It typically is whoever is applying and
Awesome.
doing the change of use. So. And then parks SDCs, they are per dwelling unit, and actually we're making a change, an adjustment in our methodology. We had all single family, multifamily paying one park SDC per dwelling unit. And now we're doing single family pays one, and then multifamily, depending on the type of multifamily, pays a percentage of one. Because there's just less people. Yeah. And then commercial and industrial do not pay. But lodging does. So people that stay in hotels, you know, council has considered that and they feel that they do use our parks benefit them, so they pay. They don't like it, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
yep.
I have a question. Is 3/4 inch your smallest meter?
5/8, 3/4, yeah.
Okay, cause it talks about 3/4 and then on page 12, there's a table that says 5/8 inch meter equivalents,
Yeah, I think 5/8, 3/4, it's kind of,
right?
yeah, yep,
Yeah, it looked like they were the same pricing, same.
yep.
So for multifamily, I was curious, you know, at what point, like, how many units are you talking about when you get above that, like, 1 inch meter?
So what we've seen is typically a 20 unit will be able to use a 2-inch meter pretty easily.
Okay.
You get much above that, you're into a 3-inch. So a lot of times they'll end up doing multiple 2-inch meters versus going to a 3-inch meter. For a lot of reasons, they want to be able to isolate buildings, you know, like the buildings behind Bimart. Can't remember what they're called. Should know that. I want to say the Oxbow, but
The ones on Felicity Lane?
yeah. So I want to say there's 3 2-inch meters back there feeding those 5 buildings.
Yeah, so when you basically like divide the total for like a 2 inch meter by 10 units, it's like not that bad.
Right. Yep. Yep. And the multifamily development out at Sunset Meadows, I want to say their unit count is right around 80, maybe a little bit north of 80. And they're able to do it with a 3-inch meter. So you get quite a bit more water through that 3-inch than you can a 2-inch.
So you talked about how council basically makes a grant to support affordable housing by defraying the cost of the SDCs. Has there been any discussion about other needed things in town like childcare that are not necessarily, like, childcare is a tough one because you're not, it's a lot of trips. It can be a lot of water
Sure.
use.
Yep.
But it's super expensive, right?
Right.
It's hard to make that math work. Has there been any discussion about any other uses that might be able to have a similar SDC waiver?
I think there's potential there. Council has talked a lot about childcare.
Mhm.
Because they know it is an issue, not only for Sisters, but all of Central Oregon. And it could be state and Northwest wide, I don't know, but they haven't gotten down into the details of any type of childcare funding program. I think it potentially could happen if they had, you know, somebody that wanted to develop a piece of property and come in
Mhm.
and they would have to make the ask, and then it would be up to council to develop policy around that. Yep. But there definitely is a strong interest, and it was a conversation during goal setting as well to try to work on that and try to be a partner with somebody or some way to get more daycare into.
It's in the comp plan too.
Yep.
There was a bullet on the slide. It was like the last bullet and it said something about philosophy of balance for just those. Is there anything written on this philosophy or is it kind of people can come and present to city council and then they do what they feel at the time about the issues or?
So right now, our code says, our STC code says that STCs can be waived for affordable housing, and that's it.
Okay.
As of now. So if they were gonna do a discussion about daycare or some other type of need, they would have to revise that policy to allow that. But right now, it's everybody pays the full amount of SDCs, except they can waive for affordable housing.
The policy does not say they have to make it whole from somewhere else. They just have been doing that
Correct.
because they.
Correct. Yep. Yep. And then they have, obviously, in that policy, a definition of what is affordable housing and then also for how long. That used to be for 50 years, and I think they backed it off. 20 or 30 years, that has to remain affordable. So working with Habitat over the years, Habitat has been able to get grant dollars through a state program to pay for water and sewer hookup fees, STCs. And they've come to council to ask for parks and street SEC waivers, which council's worked with them on that. So council has an affordable housing fund. And it's partially funded through lodging tax, as well as there's some other components, but it's mostly through a percentage of the lodging tax. And they set those dollars aside to basically be able to shore up those STC funds with the waivers. They're talking CET, which that's always an interesting construction excise tax, which Bend has, which really does a great job for providing affordable housing dollars.
So, yeah.
But it got brought up probably around 2018, and it got people excited real quick in town, so it didn't go very far.
Lori, that's just a joke in town. What's gonna get everybody excited?
You never know.
Where's the mob gonna show up today with their pitchforks and torches?
It'd be a gas station.
Yeah.
We were hoping on a roundabout, and we got lucky there so far.
I think
The
I'm
first roundabout, they did show up, so.
Pretty quiet on next door. Good sun.
It's ebb and flow,
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Everybody's down in the desert right now, so
could be.
when they get back, it'll be fired up.
They're seeing, the break in the clouds a little bit, and spring's kind of, yeah. We hope.
There are still those cheap flights on a Velo
I
down
know.
to Palm Springs, so.
Are there any other questions on SDCs?
I hope that helped. Like I said, I'm not an expert, like our consultant, but our consultant he had to be at a council meeting in Dallas or, somewhere on the west side.
Cool. Great, thanks for that update. I understand more about SDCs than I ever did before, so.
Cool.
I'm just gonna say growth pays for growth. That's all I'm gonna say on that, so,
It's the whole idea.
good. Any other business? Any updates, Paul?
Quick update, our roundabout's underway. We had a little bit of excitement last Friday when the contractor decided to shove the entire highway over and grind and restripe and throw a bunch of flaggers out on the highway and create, 25-minute delays. People got excited. Obviously, their train of thought is this is the way it's going to be every day. It's like, no, it's not. That was just, they got the first good weather they did it. So now they got half of the highway that they can actually work with now. So the detour seems to be working decently. We might make some adjustments right out here, especially with the school drop off and pickup. We got some people that are sneaking in. I shouldn't say sneaking, but they're coming in and then kind of jamming up that intersection more than what the detour was trying to accomplish. So the idea with the detour is really, you're taking out the north leg, you're taking out pretty much the west leg, and you're making that kind of that turn movement, a free movement into the school grounds. But with these guys kind of sneaking out there, it kind of jams that up a little bit. So we'll probably make some adjustments there. But and then we're into, with the weather coming up, spring cleanup. Our street sweepers already been going. You'll see it out there over the next week or two. We'll be opening our campground on April 1st. So we're getting that ready to go. And all the fun things that come with getting that ready to go is, we blow out our water system every year. So we got to recharge that and make sure we don't have any leaks, fix any that we do have. Get our self-pay kiosk fired back up, our account going again, our credit card account for the RV dump station. And then we got a new Wi-Fi service in there. I shouldn't say a new service. We got new gear, new router. We put a couple more antennas up to just help with the broadcast, and mostly it's try to keep our hosts online as much as possible. We're not really concerned about people's ability to stream. We don't have that big of a service, but our camp hosts need to be able to jump on and do what they need to do because it's a 100% reservation system. So when that goes down, it creates issues. So hopefully with the new infrastructure we got, that'll work, be much more resilient. And then we'll be taking water level measurements. That's always exciting. See what our aquifer is doing. From what we can see, we're really close to what we were last year. You got some wells that are actually higher. The water table's higher. Some wells are about a foot lower. So pretty consistent.
How many wells?
We got 4. Yep. And then we're right in the middle of budget season. So I'm putting together the budget now. We just ran through forecasting out through the end of this year through June 30th. And we're doing well. Our personnel services is down, is lower than anticipated, largely due to our vacancies in our department. It's been really tough to hire. We're all competing for the same type of people. And I'm part of a Central Oregon wide public works group with all the directors and superintendents from all the cities, all the counties. And at our last meeting last week, we were all singing the blues about trying to hire people, trying to hire qualified people, was even tougher. So, and then trying to find a place for them to live, it's brutal. So our crew's been great. They've been just awesome this winter. They've, gotten challenged for sure. A lot more plowing, a lot more sanding, a lot more de-icing, and all the fun things that come with snow and cold weather in January, pipes freezing, having to find meters, having a library flooding. But our guys are unbelievable. I mean, they know where that stuff is. They can get on it, and they got GIS on their phones, and it's really pretty impressive what they can find. And they can go out on a snow covered street and be like, that valve is right there, and sure enough, it's right there. And you're just like, how do you know that? I mean, we got over 2,000 valves in our system, and they just, yeah. Having longevity in a crew is huge. That's the bottom line for sure. And they're all bought in. So we're good. They feel comfortable, even though we're a couple people down, but we're continuing to advertise and interview. And our biggest deal is we got to find the right fit, whether they're coming in with experience or not. They got to be able to integrate with that existing team. And that team has pretty high standards. So.
Do you have folks approaching retirement age?
No, we're doing okay there. Yep. Everybody
That is not
else,
the case everywhere else.
everybody else in the region, that's what's happening. Over the next 3 years, they're losing a big chunk of their workforce. So we're strategizing on how we can, work together to hire CDL training staff that can train all of our crews, new drivers, versus having to send each one of them to school and pay $7,000 a driver and you hope you get a couple years out of them. You know, so trying to strategize on how we kind of move into that next generation of public works people that we have to have. So,
Yeah, and well, something else to think about is if everybody else in the region is losing people, then they're gonna try to poach your people.
but yeah, I mean, it's not so
What's
much
the
with us,
strategy
but
there?
the counties in Bend and Redmond, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I got to hear all that, you know.
It's
Redmond's
vicious.
like, we're stealing all the Ben's, and Ben's like, we're stealing all the counties.
Vicious, vicious cycle.
It is, yep.
Yeah, Redmond has stolen a bunch of Ben stuff recently.
Out of the engineering department, it sounds like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, that's crazy.
Not exclusively though. There's another one. headed
Yeah.
to Public Works.
Yeah, Ben's usually pretty good at stealing our planners, but they don't really steal them. It's just, it's easier for the planners because they're living in Bend, right? So, yeah, it just makes sense for them, but we've lost quite a few planners to Bend.
So one thing I know that, I mean, and this is like thinking about future generations, is I know the Upper Deschutes Watershed Council does some really great stuff with the sisters students. And I just contracted with them in Bend to do we're calling it a One Water education program. We're targeting fifth graders and we're targeting high school kids.
Oh, cool.
And we're having them provide that, but part of that is in addition to, you know, adding on to that curriculum about watersheds to like understand where your water comes from, where it goes, water conservation, you know, kind of those stewardship ethics, but in terms of things that, you know, it'd be great to have them know and take home. And part of it is we're gonna try to have every once in a while some of our staff go in as we can and introduce them and like, this is a potential career path you probably never thought of, because everybody just tells you to go to college, which is great, but we're really lacking people going into the trades.
Right. Yep. We are, and it's interesting. I've had a couple phone calls from actually sisters' kids that have moved and they went to college and they're living, you know, elsewhere out of state. And they want to move back and they saw this advertisement. They're like, what kind of work is this? And I'm like, it's really blue collar work. It really is. You do get educated, you do go to training, you do have to get continuing education credits. So there is some book time in there and there's really unlimited growth potential there. But they're like, I kind of like working from home. So we're just like, so yeah, the younger generation is different and we're gonna have to adjust to that.
Yep.
For sure.
And that's why it's all gonna go to, you know, cyber-based stuff where you have sensors on all your equipment so that you don't have to send a person out there to monitor the equipment.
Yeah,
It's-
automatic shut off valves.
Everything's
the
gonna
whole
have
deal.
to go that way.
Definitely.
Nick, I got a question for you in regards to end of year, because we're coming up to the last 4 months of the year, 3 months of the year, and there's a bunch of roads that haven't been paved that were put off from last year. Do you have that scheduled so we don't waste, use it or lose it dollars on the roads?
Yeah, we don't play the use it or lose it because the fund balance just continues to increase.
Okay, good.
So we
That's-
don't have to deal with
Okay,
that.
good.
But our overlay project, sorry, I should have mentioned that. We got bids in last week before,
Week before.
and took it to council, got approved. The original planning estimate was $360,000. Which was last spring. Our construction estimate, engineer's estimate was 306. And low bid was 280, let's say 287 or something.
Around that.
Oh,
A good contractor?
New contractor out of the valley. Yep, K&L Industries. They're big in the
Yeah.
Portland area. And they're starting to chase more municipal county projects. They got City of Medford's. They got ours. I think they just got Deschutes counties.
It's,
So we'll see. The references checked out great. And they're planning on doing everything we wanted them to do and how we wanted to do it. So we're overlaying Arrowleaf Trail out by Ray's, and that's night work only. And actually with the cost savings, we're able to add in that intersection of Arrowleaf and McKinney Butte really got hammered this winter. In fact, we had a pothole. Or one pothole this year was right in the middle of that intersection. Which I lose sleep over potholes. I don't like. So we're gonna grind and inlay that entire intersection from where the roundabout goes to the west side of McKinney Butte or Arrowleaf. And then we got Buckaroo Trail. We got Redwood, South Redwood and South Cottonwood in Pine Meadow Village. And then we got a little chunk of Coyote Springs that was phase 3 when it got built. So it had newer pavement. And then that cul-de-sac right there as well. Is that it? I think that's the list.
I can pull that up.
do some work on.
It's what we brought, yeah, to you guys last year. Yep. And then, so at the next meeting, we'll do again, another quick pavement update. Tell you what our PCI rating's at, and then what roads we're planning to chip seal, seal coat and overlay this year.
Yes, I sort of hate the new road in front of my house because some rollerbladers found it. So they're going back and forth in the.
Oh, I bet.
My dog hates it. Go somewhere else.
It is so much smoother than it was.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, yeah, Cottonwood's
Cottonwood's
pretty
rough.
rough, yeah, yep, so. Yeah, it's our streets held up pretty well. Our new chip seal held up pretty decently. We're pretty happy with that so far from what we've seen. It was a different product that the county put down this year compared to probably 15 years before that. They used to use a oil coated rock with a hot asphalt oil, and this year they went to a dry rock with an emulsion, and then they fog sealed it afterwards. And that fog sealing really locked it in on the top. Made the roads look good too, I thought. You know, it's kind of a 2-step inconvenience. I didn't like that because, you know, you had the inconvenience during the chip seal and the chip seal cleanup. And then the day of fog sealing is a sticky mess. People weren't too happy about that.
So with 2 individual layers, that's not triggering ADA, is it, for?
No.
I've run into that before. Where
Yeah, and we don't do a lot of chip sealing around ramps. Most of our chip seal is a little bit out in the industrial park, but most of it's, you know, the south side, McKinney Butte a little bit, Barkley, few ramps in there, but yeah.
It was one, I was walking down the dog today and I was looking at all these small gray gravel that was all over the place. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? I'm like, oh, it was in the snow that was being pushed around for the last couple months.
Yep.
So that's where it came from. So
Yep.
thank you for that clarification.
And another thing that I wanted to bring up to you guys, so ODOT has a curb ramp ADA mandate from the DOJ, actually, to replace all curb ramps throughout the state that do not meet current PROAG rules. They used to be guidelines, now they're actual rules. And so they came through and surveyed all of the ramps in town on their highway. So we got all the ramps downtown, we got the ramps out at the new roundabouts, a few ramps in here that are getting ripped out and replaced. And they came back with a report from David Evans and Associates, and they basically failed every ramp.
That's how it's going statewide.
And the reason that they're failing this is not the PROAG rules, is ODOT has gone above PROAG rules in their internal policies. So they don't allow any kind of lip. They don't allow any kind of bevel. They don't allow pavers, which all of our land and areas are pavers. So their project in the downtown, and they've designed it and everything, is basically redo all the ramps. And our ramps downtown are like exemplary ADA ramps. They're models. This is what you want them to look like. But they have all these little thresholds that are above PROAG. And then they're gonna completely ruin the look of the sidewalks with the pavers they're gonna rip out. So
Oh,
yeah, it's miserable. And then we've all seen these projects all over the state of Oregon, and they don't just do an intersection at a time. They'll do a corner here and a corner there and a corner there. And 2 years later, they're done with your town. But during that 2 years, you got cones and barricades up and it just looks like hell. So we reached out to the area manager at ODOT and said, what's the deal with us? These are new ramps. They even are scheduling to take out some of the ramps that they built at the Barkley Roundabout,
Well,
which are 2017 ramps. And they said, okay, we got a solution. So we met with them. And their solution was, we'll draft an agreement, an MOU with you, and you will take all liability. And we'll walk away. So we're like,
this is so ODOT.
yeah. So, yeah.
Ugh.
So we're not discounting that. We don't like that. I don't think anybody likes that, but we're technically liable for every ramp in town that we have besides those. So we're gonna have our engineer, he's already reviewed the list of issues from the survey, and he's like, a lot of it is these ODOT guidelines
That's what I'm
That-
wondering, how many are?
that the ramp still meets PROAG. Or could with a little bit of, typically when you pour asphalt against a concrete surface, asphalt's flexible, so you'll get some heaving, you'll get some settling, depending on what time of year. You could do some asphalt repair without having to rip out the ramps. So he's going through that, and actually he's gonna have his own surveyors go through and see exactly what his list, how many ramps, if any, are actually out of compliance with PROAG. Because that's what we care about. And then he'll bring it back to us, and then we'll have to make that decision. I think we'll bring him in front of you guys once we have good sound packet of issues. Get a recommendation from you. I think that'll help with the discussion with council to have as many eyeballs on this as possible.
Yeah,
Because it is,
the risk is huge.
the risk is big, not huge, but big. I think just the inconvenience for town and to see just town, there's a huge public process that went in the design of Cascade Avenue, the type of paver, the paver layout. And those pavers were selected because they met ADA. They are not beveled pavers, they are flat. And we actually took them to COCA, Central Oregon Coalition for Accessibility, and we did a mock-up. And they ran their wheelchairs over it, and they were involved in the process, and they're like, yep, we like that paver right there. So there's a big process, and to see that just kind of cast aside didn't really sit well with us.
Who pays for the new ramps?
Well, if ODOT was to come in, ODOT,
If we do that, if we take over it, then it's our penny.
that's not where I would start. But yeah,
So
probably.
would still own that right of way, so.
They own the right of way up to the curb, but they don't own the ramps, they don't own the sidewalks. They're ours,
Oh, really?
but they touch their highway.
Yeah.
Which is where they fall in that
Oh,
lawsuit.
That's where they're doing.
I know, that's
it.
exactly
Yeah.
why they're doing it. There's guys that chase ambulances all day on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we've never had any type of trip issue, ADA complaint. Like I said, they're kind of model ramps are nice and wide and fairly flat and
Well, it is really interesting. I mean, that changes my opinion if ODOT only owns to the curb. So you already have a bunch of the liability anyway.
we do. We do. Yep. Yeah, that's gonna be a difficult decision. So,
And there isn't like a, I'm blanking on the, context sensitive solution for like downtown areas for their guidelines.
not for
Or for-
ODOT, yeah,
Well,
or
no, but
ADA really.
But ODOT's above and beyond ProAg.
Correct, correct.
I think part of that was, so when ODOT, when they got sued, they went into a negotiated agreement and their
Oh.
agreement, they agreed on like a certain
This is what we're
version
gonna
of
do.
ProAg.
Yeah.
And then ProAg gets adjusted all the time.
Right,
So I think it's made for a lot of problems.
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, but all the work that you've seen in almost every little town that you've driven through in the last couple of years is because of that lawsuit, so.
Yep.
And some have had really positive benefits from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's ramps where there weren't ramps before. Oh, no
Like
question,
Down in
no
what,
question.
Culver or sorry, south, so like
Hillcrest.
Gilchrist and
Mhm.
Crescent, like Crescent is. that
Grass
one.
Valley, Morrow,
Amazing.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
really positive things.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. This-
you drive through Vale, looks really nice now, so they did some street improvements with it, so. No, I get that, but I mean, yeah. We're on the list. So more to come.
Any board comments?
Thanks for all that information.
Sure.
With that being said, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.
Great.